All right, deep divers, get ready because today we're marching headfirst into ancient Greece
We're going deep.
to uncover the reality of those legendary warriors. You know, the ones, the
Oh, it's like,
hoplites,
oh
those
my.
epic clashes of shields and spears, the bronze, the glory.
It's an image that never gets old, does it?
Never. And to help us separate Hollywood fantasy from historical reality,
We need to dig deeper.
we're partnering up with Simple History today. So strap in as we explore what it really meant to be a citizen soldier in ancient Greece.
Because you see, the Hoplite, they weren't some detached professional warrior class. No, their very existence speaks volumes about ancient Greek society itself.
It is mind-blowing when you think about it. These were everyday people, right? Farmers, artisans, maybe even like pottery enthusiasts,
Exactly.
dropping everything to defend their city-state. Imagine like your neighbor suddenly dropping their gardening tools to go fight off an invasion.
It sounds almost absurd in today's world, doesn't it?
Totally. And, you know, the video really drives home the point that this citizen soldier system, it wasn't just some temporary fix. It was the core of their armies for centuries.
Absolutely. From the 7th to the 4th centuries BCE, this system thrived.
Yeah.
And it highlights, I think, a really profound sense of civic duty back then.
Duty, yeah. Protecting your city-state, it wasn't just like an option, it was everyone's responsibility.
It was woven into the fabric of their society.
Which is, wow, that's a heavy responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of heavy, can we talk about the training regimens? Because the video does such a brilliant job of like juxtaposing Athens and Sparta, and it's amazing to see these two very different approaches to, well, getting battle ready.
Oh, fascinating comparison for sure. Athens, they had this organized, almost, familiar to us system,
Right.
where young men, they underwent compulsory service,
Yeah.
while older citizens were called upon only when, if and when a war actually broke out.
It's like the ancient Greek version of weekend warriors,
Yeah.
right? Which I guess makes sense for a bustling city-state like Athens. But then there's Sparta. Then they took things to a whole other level. It's like their entire society was a military academy.
Well, that's not far off.
The video really emphasizes how, for Spartans, being a hoplite was practically a lifelong commitment, like
Yeah.
ingrained from, well, practically
Well,
from birth.
It was in their blood.
Yeah, I mean, talk about dedication, but I guess it makes you wonder about, like, the impact on individual freedom and expression in a society like that.
It's a valid question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it all circles back to those contrasting societal values we talked about, shaping their approaches to warfare. Sparta, with that relentless focus on military discipline, well, they created incredible soldiers.
For sure.
But at what cost, right? Two very different approaches, each reflecting their city-state's values, their priorities, what they held most important.
It makes you wonder which city-state you would have thrived in more, doesn't it? Would you be Athenian? Spartan? I'd probably be Athenian, let's be real.
Ah.
Anyway, while we're on the topic of different approaches, the video also highlighted the Theban secret band, which really piqued my interest.
Ah, yes. A fascinating example of, let's say, specialization within that citizen soldier framework.
Right.
The Sacred Band, they were known for their, well, incredible bravery and effectiveness on the battlefield. It just goes to show that even amidst a citizen army, there was still room for elite units with, let's say, a very particular set of skills.
It's like that saying, it takes a village to raise a hoplite, but it takes a sacred band to really bring the thunder, or something like that. Okay, ready for a mind-blowing detail. Hoplites, they had to provide their own equipment.
Now, this is the part where, people who haven't really delved into this before, they tend to, well, their jaws drop a little.
Because it's wild. It was bring your own bronze, quite literally.
It's so different from how we think of military service today, isn't it?
Sure. Right. Standardized gear, everything provided, but back then, showing up ready for war, that was on you. That was your responsibility.
Imagine the pressure.
Talk about an added layer of pre-battle anxiety. And the video even mentions how the quality of your armor, it directly correlated to, well, your wealth.
Ah, yes, the economic realities of ancient warfare.
Right. Like, could you imagine going into battle with, like, the ancient Greek equivalent of, a rusty old shield?
Yeah.
While the warrior next to you is decked out in, like, top-of-the-line bronze? I would be freaking out.
I think we all would be. And it really makes you question the idea of a level playing field, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Did wealth automatically translate to an advantage on the battlefield? It's hard to imagine it didn't play a role.
Oh, for sure. Just think about the impact on morale.
Absolutely. To know that your equipment is, shall we say, subpar, it has to affect your fighting spirit.
Right. I can already feel the anxiety creeping in just thinking about it. So let's delve into, like, what this Bring Your Own Bronze starter pack actually entailed.
Okay, picture this. You're a hoplite, you're putting on your armor. Now, if you're lucky, it's bronze. But if you weren't as wealthy,
You might be rocking some linen, right?
exactly, layers upon layers of linen. And then there's the helmet, which, well, let's just say it pretty much only lets you see what's right in front of you.
Talk about claustrophobia.
Ah,
Okay, but no hoplite is complete without that iconic Hoplon shield, which the video describes as a beast of a thing.
it really was. 3 feet of solid wood and
It's a
bronze.
walking wall, basically. And then, of course, you've got to have the offensive firepower, which brings us to
The Doro, their 8-foot spear.
8 feet. I can barely hold a broom that long.
It was their primary weapon, used for both thrusting and throwing.
Talk about versatility. But wait, there's more.
They also had a backup weapon, right? For those, shall we say, up-close and personal encounters.
Indeed. The Xephos, a short sword, just in case things got a little too close for comfort on the battlefield.
And let's not forget about the often unsung heroes of these battles, the slaves who served as attendants. Yes. They're often left out of the Hollywood depictions, aren't they?
Yeah.
But their contributions were vital.
Oh, absolutely vital. Carrying supplies, tending to the wounded. Talk about essential workers, right? The video does a good job of highlighting their importance, and it's a good reminder that slavery, unfortunately, was deeply entrenched in ancient Greek society, even on the battlefield.
It's a dark side of history that we can't ignore. A crucial part of the hoplite machine, really.
Right. It really puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
So all this talk of like gear and training, it kind of naturally leads us to the main event, how these hoplites actually fought. And that's where that legendary phalanx formation comes in.
Ah, the phalanx.
Yeah.
The stuff of legends. But also, a perfect example of how limitations in technology, or in this case, the lack of certain technologies, can lead to some pretty fascinating tactical innovations.
It's true. They didn't have like tanks or long-range missiles back then, so they created this incredible, almost surreal wall of bronze and muscle.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine, just picture this. You're on a battlefield, right? And you see, in the distance, 8 rows deep of hoplites, their shield interlocked, those 8-foot spears bristling out,
It'd be terrifying.
like some kind of giant bronze porcupine. A truly imposing sight, and one that, well, must have struck fear into the hearts of many.
No doubt about it. And the video does a fantastic job of like visually representing just how massive and imposing that phalanx must have been. And there's this one detail I absolutely love about the flute player.
The Aulos.
Yes. Setting the pace for the entire formation.
It sounds strange at first, right? A flute on a battlefield.
Yeah.
But it served a vital purpose.
Yeah, it wasn't just for like morale or something, was it?
No, not at all. Think of it like this. It was their metronome, their way of making sure that the entire phalanx moved as one, each hoplite perfectly synchronized with the others.
It's like a mesmerizing, terrifying ballet of war.
Precisely. And imagine the psychological impact on the enemy.
Oh man, I'd be running for the hills.
This wall of shields, advancing towards you with an almost unnatural precision, the ground trembling beneath their synchronized steps, the sound of the flute cutting through the air.
Talk about psychological warfare. And speaking of which, the video brought up a battle where the phalanx really, proved its worth. Marathon, 490 BC. A story for the ages, if you ask me.
A pivotal moment in Greek history, no doubt, where those Athenian hoplites, they faced the full might of the invading Persian forces, and the casualty figures, even if potentially a bit exaggerated, they still tell a powerful story.
They really do. The video mentions sources suggesting that Athens lost something like 192 men.
A shockingly low number compared to...
Persia's 6,400. Now, I know historical accounts can be, a bit fuzzy, but even if those numbers are a bit inflated, it's still a resounding testament to the phalanx effectiveness.
Absolutely. And, it's important to remember that Marathon, it wasn't just a military victory. It had a seismic impact on Greek morale, on their self-belief. It essentially solidified the hoplite, and by extension, the phalanx they formed, as symbols of Greek resilience, of their ability to stand strong, even against seemingly insurmountable odds.
It really is an incredible story, and it makes you realize that, sometimes victory isn't just about having the biggest army, the fanciest weapons, or even the most experienced generals. Sometimes it's about the courage of everyday people, people willing to stand up to fight for something they believe in.
Precisely. The hoplite, with their, let's be honest, relatively simple equipment, their disciplined training, they embody that very idea.
They do. It's almost inspiring, right? This ragtag bunch of, well, not really ragtag, but, citizen soldiers facing off against a massive empire.
And emerging victorious.
Exactly. Proves that courage and determination can go a long way, even against, overwhelming challenges.
A timeless lesson, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And it makes you think, what started as a deep dive into like the nitty-gritty of ancient Greek warfare.
The bronze, the shields, the formations.
Exactly. It's become like this reflection on courage, resilience, the power of collective action, stuff that's still relevant today.
That's the power of history, isn't it? These stories from the past, they have a way of holding up a mirror to our own time, forcing us to ask some tough questions, to confront some uncomfortable truths.
It's true. So as we, start to wrap up our Hoplite deep dive here,
What have we learned?
what's the takeaway for someone listening in the 21st century? What can we learn from these ancient warriors? Besides, don't mess with a guy with an 8-foot spear.
Right. Well, I think the hoplite way of war, as ancient as it might seem, it raises some pretty important questions that are still relevant today. Questions like, what does it mean to be a citizen, not just in name, but in action? What are we willing to stand up for, to fight for, to sacrifice for?
It's deep stuff, man. It really makes you think about like the core values of a society and how those values they translate into action even, millennia ago.
Exactly. It's about understanding that the choices these hoplites made, the sacrifices they endured, it wasn't just about, conquering land or expanding an empire. It was about something much more fundamental.
Right. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their way of life, stuff that really resonates even today.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do those ideals, those motivations, how do they manifest in our own time? How do our own societal structures, the way we live our lives today, how does that shape our approach to, well, everything really? To defense, to conflict, even to something as basic as citizenship itself.
Wow. Yeah, when you put it that way, it's kind of mind-blowing. We went from talking about like the mechanics of a phalanx formation to pondering the very meaning of civic duty and the human condition.
That's the beauty of history, when you say. It's not about just memorizing dates and names. It's about those aha moments, those unexpected connections that illuminate the present, that make us question who we are and where we fit into this grand narrative.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So for all you deep divers out there, as you go about your day, let the legacy of the hoplite linger in your thoughts for a bit. Think about those citizen soldiers, those everyday heroes. Can you see any echoes of that spirit in our modern world? And if so, where? It's something to ponder, to discuss, to debate, maybe even over a nice cup of, I don't know, ancient Greek wine. Or maybe just a regular coffee will do. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today, folks. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.